I can't be with a woman like you. Not because she had betrayed him, not because she had lied, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she was poor. Because when the bill came at that restaurant, that fancy restaurant he had insisted they go to even though she whispered she couldn't afford it, her card had declined. And Chinedu, the man she had loved more than herself, had pushed back his chair, straightened his designer shirt, and walked out. Just like that. No hesitation. No shame. And his friends had laughed. Amara stood in the rain, shoes soaked, chest hollow, asking God one question. Why? She didn't know it yet, but in exactly 5 days, that question would be answered in a way that would shake the foundations of everything she thought she knew about life, love, and power. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click the subscribe button right now so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Now, let's get back to Amara. Here is what you need to understand before this story truly begins. Amara was not just a girl who got dumped. She was a girl who had given everything, and I mean everything, to a man who saw her as nothing more than a stepping stone. A girl who had eaten Gary for dinner so Chinedu could eat jollof rice. A girl who had sold her mother's wrapper to pay his rent when he lost his job. A girl who had stayed when every single sign told her to leave. And here is what Chinedu never knew. He never knew that somewhere across Lagos, in a quiet hospital room smelling of antiseptic and fading flowers, an old man was lying in a bed with tubes running through his arms and a lawyer sitting beside him. A lawyer holding a document that had Amara's name written on it in bold, black ink. He never knew that the woman he had just humiliated in public was, at that very moment, about to become one of the most powerful people in the history of Nigerian real estate. He never knew. But you're going to know everything. You're going to find out what happened when Amara got that phone call. What she felt when she saw the numbers on that document. What she said when Chinedu came back. And most importantly, what she chose. Because this is not just a story about money. This is a story about what happens when a woman finally discovers her worth. Stay with me. To understand what happened, you have to go back to the beginning. Amara Obi grew up in Ajagunal, one of Lagos's most unforgiving neighborhoods. In a 2-room apartment she shared with her mother, her younger brother Emeka, and sometimes the smell of their neighbor's pepper soup that drifted through the thin walls like a teasing ghost. Her mother, Mrs. Grace Obi, was a petty trader who sold tomatoes and peppers at the local market from 5 in the morning until the sun gave up for the day. Her hands were always stained red. Her back was always bent. But her spirit was unbreakable. Amara, her mother used to say, pressing those red-stained hands against her daughter's cheeks, "This poverty is not your destiny. It is just your starting point." Amara believed her. She studied harder than anyone in her school. She read by candlelight when NEPA took the light, which was always. She won a partial scholarship to university, and she worked 2 jobs on the side to cover the rest. She was the kind of woman who didn't complain. She just moved. That was how she met Chinedu. It was in her 2nd year at university. He had walked into the library where she worked part-time, tall, sharp-jawed, wearing a cologne that smelled like everything she had never had. He had smiled at her, and she had felt something she had never felt before. Possibility. "You're always here," he had said, leaning against the desk. "I work here," she had replied. He had laughed. "I know. I come here just to see you work." And that was it. That was the beginning. For the first few months, Chinedu was everything. He was charming, funny, ambitious, or so he said. He talked about his business ideas like they were already real. He talked about the future like he had already seen it. And Amara, who had spent her whole life building things from nothing, loved that about him. She didn't notice at first that his ideas never actually went anywhere. She didn't notice that his business meetings were actually afternoons spent in lounges with friends. She didn't notice that slowly, quietly, she had become the one holding everything together. She was paying his phone bills. She was sending him money for transport. She was covering his rent when his landlord threatened to throw him out. And every time she did it, Chinedu would hold her face in his hands and say, "Baby, I'll pay you back when things pick up. You know I love you, right?" And she believed him. She believed him for 3 years. Until the night of the restaurant. They had been invited to a dinner. One of Chinedu's friends was celebrating a promotion, and it was at a place called Signature, a high-end restaurant in Victoria Island where the cheapest item on the menu was 12,000 naira. Amara had whispered to him before they went in, "Chinedu, I don't have enough. Can we sit this one out? He had waved her off. Don't worry about it. I'll handle it. But he didn't handle it. When the bill came, a bill for over 80,000 naira, because Chinedu had ordered freely and encouraged his friends to do the same. He reached into his pocket, looked at Amara, and said, "Babe, your card." She had frozen. "Chinedu, I told you. Just try it," he said, his voice casual, but his eyes hard. She had tried it. The machine beeped twice. Declined. The table went silent for exactly 2 seconds. And then Chinedu's friend Rodamai had started to laugh. Then another friend. Then another. And Chinedu, the man she had fed, clothed, supported, and loved, had looked at her like she was something he had accidentally stepped on. "This is embarrassing," he said quietly. "You know what? Just forget it." He paid the bill himself, from an account she didn't know he had. And on the walk outside, in front of everyone, he said it. "I can't be with a woman like you. Chinedu. You have nothing, Amara. Nothing. I need someone who matches me. Not someone who's going to embarrass me every time we go out. I have been carrying you for 3 years. I never asked you to." He didn't even look back. "We're done." And he got into a car with his friends and drove away, leaving Amara standing in the Lagos rain. Alone. She didn't sleep that night. She lay on her bed in her small apartment in Surulere, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain hammer the zinc roof above her head. Her phone had 7 missed calls, all from her friend Kemi, who had heard what happened. She couldn't pick up. She didn't have any words. She just kept replaying it. "You have nothing, Amara." Was that true? Had she spent 3 years of her life giving everything to someone who saw nothing in her? By morning, her eyes were swollen but dry. She had cried herself empty, and something cold and quiet had settled in her chest. Not anger yet, just a kind of terrible clarity. She got up, washed her face, made a cup of tea with the last tea bag in the tin, and sat by the window watching Lagos wake up. That was when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't pick it. She was tired of the world. But something, some pull she couldn't explain, made her thumb slide across the screen. "Hello. Is this Miss Amara Obi?" The voice on the other end was formal. Careful. The voice of someone delivering news they had rehearsed. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Barrister Emmanuel Ease. I am the senior legal counsel for the estate of the late Chief Akwachukwu Obi." A pause. "He passed away yesterday evening. And Miss Obi, he has named you as his sole heir." The tea mug slipped from Amara's hand. It hit the floor and shattered. She didn't move to pick it up. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Can you say that again?" "Chief Akwachukwu Obi. He was your father's elder brother. He has left his entire estate to you." "Miss Obi, are you there?" She was there. But she was also somewhere else entirely. Somewhere between disbelief and a feeling she had no name for. "I didn't even know he existed," she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was just the truth. "He knew about you," Barrister Ease said quietly. "He had been watching from a distance for many years. He wanted to be sure you were the right person before he made his decision." Another pause, heavier this time. "Miss Obi, the estate is valued at approximately $950 billion in real estate assets. Properties across Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, London, and Dubai. We need you to come in as soon as possible." Amara sat down on the floor right there, not in a chair, not on the bed. Just on the floor, among the broken pieces of her tea mug, with the Lagos morning noise filtering through the window. $950 billion. Her. The woman who had just been dumped for having no money. She pressed her hand flat against the cool floor to make sure she wasn't dreaming. The tile was real. The broken ceramic was real. The voice of Barrister Ease, still speaking carefully into the phone, was real. And then, slowly, like a fire that starts with just one quiet spark, something shifted inside her. The offices of Ease and Associates were in a tower in Victoria Island, the same island where Chinedu had humiliated her 3 nights ago. Amara walked in wearing her best dress. It was a simple purple dress she had bought at Tejuosho Market 2 years ago, carefully ironed and paired with black flats that had a small crack in the sole. She had covered the crack with a marker. She walked through those glass doors like she owned the building, because she was beginning to understand that she might own everything around it. Barrister Ease was a serious man in his 60s, with silver temples and reading glasses perched on the edge of his nose. He shook her hand without ceremony and led her into a conference room where 3 other lawyers were waiting. The documents spread across the table were thick as textbooks. "Before we begin," Barrister Ease said, "I need you to understand the scale of what we are discussing." He slid a single sheet across the table. "This is an overview of the assets." Amara looked at the sheet. Properties. Hundreds of them. Commercial towers. Residential estates. Undeveloped land banks across 6 states. International holdings. She looked up. "Why me? I never met the man." Barrister Ease folded his hands. "Chief Obi had no children. He estranged himself from your father many decades ago over a business dispute, but he never stopped paying attention to your family. When your father passed, God rest him, the chief kept eyes on your mother and on you. He admired what he saw. He was watching me. He was protecting you. In his own way." Amara sat back in her chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. The uncle she had never known. The man who had watched her from a distance, seen her work herself to the bone, and decided, "She's the one." "What do I need to do?" she said. "Sign the documents. Submit to a period of legal verification. And then, Miss Obi, everything transfers to you." She picked up the pen. Her hand was steady. But nothing that valuable comes without war. By the end of that week, before the ink was even dry on the verification documents, the attacks began. The first came from a man named Chief Boniface Adesanya, a business associate of her late uncle who claimed the will had been forged. He held a press conference. His lawyers sent threatening letters. He told journalists that a random girl from Ajigunal had manipulated an old dying man. Amara read the headline from her phone while sitting in her small Suralere apartment, still sleeping on the same mattress with the broken spring on the left side. She forwarded the article to Barrister Ease with one message: handle it. The second attack came from inside the family. A distant cousin named Obiora, who Amara had met exactly once at a funeral when she was 12, suddenly appeared with his own lawyers, claiming that as a male relative, he had a superior claim to the estate under traditional customary law. Amara got on a call with Barrister Ease the night she heard. "Can he take it?" she asked. "Not legally. The will is explicit and valid under Nigerian law." "Then why is he doing this?" "Because he is hoping you don't know that. He is betting on your inexperience and your fear." Amara was quiet for a moment. "Then, schedule a meeting. I want to meet him face to face." "Miss Obi, I'm not sure that's." "Schedule it." The meeting happened 2 days later. Obiora walked in with 2 lawyers and a smirk that told Amara everything she needed to know about him. He was a man who had spent his whole life assuming that his gender and his family name were enough to take whatever he wanted. He sat across from her, looked her up and down, and said, "You know, there's no shame in stepping aside. You can take a small settlement, something comfortable, and let the men handle the big things." Amara looked at him for a long time without speaking. Then she said, very quietly, "Obiora, I have survived Ajigunal University on a shoestring, 3 years with a man who took everything from me, and a press attack from a man worth 5 billion naira. What exactly makes you think you scare me?" Obiora blinked. "My lawyers have the complete legal brief ready to file tomorrow morning if you don't withdraw your claim by end of day today. And I want you to know, I don't settle. I finish." She stood up. "You can show yourself out." He withdrew the claim by 4 o'clock that afternoon. Through all of this, Amara was learning. Fast. She was meeting architects, property managers, CEOs, and investors. She was sitting in boardrooms where men twice her age waited for her to stumble. She didn't stumble. She asked sharp questions and took careful notes, and she called Barrister Ease every night with more questions. She was becoming someone new. Not someone different, someone more. More of what she had always been, finally given the room to be it fully. Her friend Kemi, who had practically moved into her apartment to keep her company through everything, watched her one evening as she reviewed a property portfolio and said, "Amara, do you realize what is happening to you right now?" Amara looked up. "I'm working." "You're glowing," Kemi said softly. "You look like yourself. Like the real yourself. Like you haven't looked in 3 years." Amara said nothing. But later that night, after Kemi had fallen asleep, she sat by the window and let herself feel it. Really feel it. The weight that had been on her for 3 years, the weight of a relationship that had been slowly emptying her, was gone. She felt light. She felt dangerous. And then her phone buzzed. A message from a number she recognized immediately. "Amara, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I heard what happened and I just want to say I'm sorry. Can we talk?" "Chinidu." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she put her phone face down on the table. Not yet. If you're still watching up to this point, type, "I'm still here," in the comment section. Because this story is just getting started, and what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. 3 weeks after the inheritance was confirmed, Amara moved. Not into one of the luxury apartments in the estate. Not yet. She needed to understand what she owned before she started living in it. So instead, she rented a clean, simple flat in Lekki. Nothing extravagant. A place to think. She was sitting in her new living room one Tuesday morning, going through property files with her newly hired assistant, a sharp young woman named Priya, when her doorbell rang. Priya raised an eyebrow. "Were you expecting someone?" "No." She opened the door. Chinidu. He was standing there in a plain gray shirt and dark jeans. And for the first time in the 3 years she had known him, he looked uncertain. Not the polished, self-assured man who had dismissed her in the rain. He looked smaller, like someone had let the air out of him. He saw her face and immediately said, "I know I have no right to be here." "You don't," she said. "Amara, how did you get this address?" He hesitated. "Kemi. I'm calling Kemi as soon as this conversation is over." She crossed her arms. "What do you want, Chinidu?" "I want to talk. Please. Just 5 minutes." She looked at him for a long time. Part of her wanted to close the door. Part of her, the part that had loved him for 3 years, still recognized his face like an old song. She hated that part. 5 minutes, she said. And she did not move from the doorway. He exhaled. "I heard about the inheritance. Everyone has. And before you say anything, I am not here because of the money." "Then why are you here?" "Because I made a mistake." His voice cracked slightly. "A terrible mistake. And I have not been able to sleep since that night." "Good." He flinched. "Amara, I was wrong. I was so wrong. The things I said. You said I had nothing." Her voice was steady, quiet. "You said I embarrassed you. You left me standing in the rain, Chinidu, in front of your friends. After 3 years. I know. Do you? Because the man who does that to someone they love, the man who walks away because a card declined at dinner, that man doesn't have a bad night. That man has a problem that money cannot fix." He was silent. "I gave you everything I had," she said, and now her voice was softer, not because she was weakening, but because the truth deserved to be spoken clearly. "I sold things to help you. I went hungry for you. And you threw me away like I was nothing. You were never nothing. Then why did you treat me like I was?" He had no answer. And in that silence, something finally closed inside Amara. Not with bitterness, but with finality. The way a wound closes when it has healed enough not to hurt anymore. "I don't hate you, Chinidu," she said. "I actually feel sorry for you. Because you had something real, and you chose to measure it by the wrong thing. And now you're standing at my door because the numbers changed, even if you tell yourself that's not why. It's not. Go home." She said it without malice. "Take care of yourself. Build something real with your life. And don't come back here." She closed the door. She stood in her hallway for a moment, her hand still on the door handle. Then she heard Priya's voice from the living room. "Should I reschedule the 11 o'clock call?" "No," Amara said, already moving. "I'll take it on time." But that was not the end of the complications. 2 days after Chinidu's visit, Barrister Ease called her with news that stopped her mid-sentence. "There's something we need to discuss," he said, and his tone was the careful one he used when things were serious. "During the final estate audit, our team discovered a clause in the original family property trust. A clause that predates your uncle's will." "What kind of clause?" "A conditional one. The trust was established by your grandfather, Chief Obi Sr., in 1974. It states that all family real estate holdings revert to joint management in the event that a secondary biological heir is identified." Amara's hand tightened on the phone. "Secondary heir? My uncle had no children." "He had no known children," Barrister Ease said carefully. "But it appears that 40 years ago, before he became chief, your uncle had a relationship. There is a child. A son. He is 41 years old. He lives in London. And our verification process has confirmed that he is biologically legitimate." The room was very quiet. "His name is Daniel Obi," Barrister Ease said. "And under the terms of the 1974 trust, he is entitled to 40% of the estate." Amara sat down slowly. "Does he know?" she asked. "He just found out. His mother told him about his father on her deathbed 3 months ago. He has been searching since then. His lawyers reached out to us this morning." Amara pressed her fingers against her temple. What does he want? He wants to meet you. She almost laughed. Of course he did. Set it up, she said. Daniel Obi did not look like what she expected. She had half expected someone aggressive. Someone like Obiora, who had come in ready to take. Instead, the man who walked into Barrister Ease's conference room was quiet. Medium height. A little nervous, actually. You could see it in the way he straightened his jacket twice before sitting down. He looked at her across the table and said, I want you to know I'm not trying to fight you for this. Then what are you trying to do? She asked. I'm trying to understand what my father left behind. I never knew him. He paused. I didn't even know his name until 3 months ago. My mother kept it from me my whole life. And then she was dying, and she finally told me, and he stopped, pressed his lips together. I'm sorry. I don't mean to make this about me. It is partly about you, Amara said. He was your father. Daniel looked at her with something complicated in his eyes. And he was your uncle who chose you. They sat with that for a moment. I don't want a war, Amara said finally. I've already fought off 2 challenges in 3 weeks. I'm tired of fighting. So am I. The trust gives you 40%. I'm not going to contest it. She watched him blink in surprise. But I want to be clear, I am not stepping back from this. I'm going to run this estate. If you want to be involved, we work together. Properly. With clear agreements and mutual respect. You'd really do that? He asked. Just like that? You don't even know me. I know you haven't threatened me, blackmailed me, or insulted me since you walked into this room, Amara said. In the last 3 weeks, you'd be surprised how low that bar is. Daniel almost smiled. That's a very low bar. Welcome to inheritance law in Nigeria. This time he did smile. And it was a small, genuine thing that made Amara think, cautiously, carefully, that this might actually be all right. 6 months later, the sun was setting over Victoria Island, painting the Lagos skyline in deep orange and rose gold. Amara stood on the rooftop terrace of a commercial tower that now bore a small, discreet plaque at its entrance. Obi Legacy Properties. It had been her idea. A rebranding, not an erasure of what her uncle had built, but an extension. A living thing. Kemi was beside her, holding a glass of non-alcoholic cider, squinting at the sunset with the satisfied look of someone who had watched their best friend become extraordinary and felt entirely vindicated. So Kemi said, How does it feel? Amara looked at the city below, at the million lights beginning to flicker on as the darkness crept in, at the buildings, some of which now belonged to her, at the roads, some of which she was funding repair work on as part of a community initiative she had quietly started in Ajigunal. It feels like beginning, she said. Beginning? Kemi raised an eyebrow. You just closed a $200 million property deal with an Emirati investor. That's not a beginning. That's a whole season finale. No. Amara shook her head. The beginning is when you know who you are. And I think I finally do. She thought about her mother, who she had moved into a proper house in Bagada 2 months ago, who had cried and refused to stop hugging her for 20 minutes, who still insisted on going to the market sometimes, not because she needed to, but because she said the market was where her spirit lived. She thought about Emeka, her brother, now enrolled in the engineering program at the University of Lagos, his fees fully covered, his textbooks piled high. She thought about the rooftop garden she was designing for one of the estate buildings in Ajigunal, a community space where children could come on weekends. Something green in the concrete. Something alive. She thought about Daniel, who had turned out to be a thoughtful, methodical business partner, the kind who did his homework and asked good questions and never tried to pull rank. They were not close, not yet, but they were building something. Carefully. And she thought about Chinedu. She had not seen him again after that Tuesday morning at her door. She had heard, through Kemi, that he had started a small business. She hoped it went well. She genuinely did. Not because she had forgiven everything in a single breath, but because she had realized something important. Chinedu's worst behavior had been the door she had needed to walk through. If he hadn't left her standing in that rain, she might have been standing in his shadow for another 3 years. Slowly disappearing. Slowly forgetting who she was. He had done her a favor. Not kindly. Not intentionally. But a favor nonetheless. She had needed to be free before she could be found. Kemi nudged her. You're thinking that look again. What look? The one where you're processing an entire philosophy of life. Amara laughed. A real laugh, full and warm. I was just thinking that pain is sometimes the best compass. Please don't put that on a motivational poster. I absolutely will. You have nothing, Amara. That's what he had said. But standing on that rooftop, with the Lagos skyline burning gold before her, Amara understood the truth. She had always had everything that mattered. The hunger, the discipline, the courage to keep going when there was no reason to believe anything would get better, the love that didn't require anything in return. Those things hadn't come with the inheritance. They had come with her, from the beginning, from her mother's red-stained hands and her brother's laughter and the candlelight she had read by an ajagunal. The money hadn't made her. It had just given her the stage she had always deserved. And somewhere across the city, Chinedu sat in a small office he was renting, scrolling through his phone. He came across a business magazine, one of the mainstream ones, with a photo on the cover. A woman in a sharp blazer, standing in front of a building, with a headline that read, Nigeria's youngest female real estate mogul, the Amara Obi story. He stared at the photo for a long time. She was looking directly into the camera, calm, composed, like someone who had nothing to prove and everything to offer. He remembered the rain. He remembered her face. He put his phone down, and for the first time, fully, completely, he understood what he had thrown away. And so here is what the story of Amara Obi teaches us. It teaches us that the people who walk away from you in your lowest moment are not always your enemies. Sometimes they are the alarm clock your life needed. Sometimes the betrayal is the blessing, wearing the ugliest possible disguise. It teaches us that worth is not something other people give you. It was never in the bank balance, the restaurant, the card that declined. It was in you, all along, waiting for the moment you'd stop letting someone else define it. It teaches us that inheritance is not always money. Sometimes what is left to you is opportunity, and what you do with it, how you carry it, what you build from it, that is yours to decide. Amara chose to build, not just towers and property portfolios. She chose to build community, family, partnership, and herself. She chose to walk into every room not with the memory of who had dismissed her, but with the clarity of who she was becoming. And perhaps most importantly, this story teaches us that poverty is a circumstance, not a character. That the woman eating Gary in a small apartment and the woman on the cover of a magazine are the same woman. The same hunger, the same fire, the same Amara. One just finally had the room to burn bright. To every single one of you watching this right now, if life has ever left you standing in the rain, if someone has ever told you that you are not enough, if the card has ever declined and the room has ever gone silent, please hear this. Your story is not over. Your uncle, or your opportunity, your moment, your turning point, may be 5 days away. It may be arriving in a form you cannot yet recognize. But the one thing that will determine whether you are ready to receive it is the same thing Amara never lost, even when she lost everything else. Her belief in herself. Hold on to yours. Thank you, genuinely, deeply, for spending this time with us today. This story, this community, this space we're building together here on this channel means everything to us. We pour our hearts into every single video because we believe in the power of a story told well. If Amara's story moved you, challenged you, made you feel something, we would love to know. Drop a comment below and tell us what part of this story hit you the hardest. Was it the rain? The boardroom? The moment she closed the door on Chinedu? Tell us. We read every single comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button right now and join this family, because we have more stories coming that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. This has been She Got Dumped for Being Poor and inherited $950 billion 5 days later. And we will see you in the next one.